Supplemental Benefits Fund Steering Committee regular quarterly meeting for January 24th, 2024, and Mark has arrived at 2 p.m. Call to order a Pledge of Allegiance. Chrissy, would you lead us in the press?
Please stand, salute, pledge.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Chrissy?
Yeah, of course.
And let's see. Next item is roll call for the current meeting. Oh, yeah.
There we go. Microphone problems. So prior to the roll call, I'll just announce that the 2024 appointments to the SPF Steering Committee for voting members are as follows. City of Oroville, David Pittman, Chrissy Riggs, and Tracy Johnstone. From Feather River Recreation Park District, Sonny Brandt and Kent Fowler.
Okay, and with that,
We have roll call for this meeting?
Yeah,
Real quick.
now we can call roll.
okay. Sonny Brandt. Here. Dave Pittman.
Here.
Chrissy Riggs. Here. Shannon DeLong.
Kent Fowler.
Kent Fowler now.
Apologies. Kent Fowler. Here. Tracy Johnstone. Here.
Thank you for roll call. Looks like item number one is election of the SBF Steering Committee Chairperson and Vice Chairpersons. Recommendations from the floor.
Okay, in your packet on page 5 is just a short staff report. We do this annually at the January meeting, and included in the packet was a listing of previous chairs and chairpersons. Historically, the committee has had or nominated a person from either the city or Feather River Recreation Park District for 2 years in a row. But it's up to you how you want to do it. Okay?
I would like to make a motion to reappoint Mayor Pittman,
Or nominate.
or nominate.
There you go.
Thank
I like
you.
that word.
Yeah, nominate Mayor Pittman for chairperson.
And do we have a nomination for vice chair?
I'll nominate Sonny Grant.
All
I'll
right,
nominate Kent Fowler for vice chair.
there you go.
I'll second that motion.
Okay. So nominated. Can we have the election all at one time?
Yes,
For
that's
both the
fine.
nominations of Mr. Pittman and Mr. Fowler.
Okay?
Let's see, we have a voting machine to use, excuse me. Please use the voting machine.
Mine is not working. There, it worked.
Sonny, is yours working?
Oh,
I'm pressing yes.
you're,
Where are you? Am I over
Riggs.
here?
I changed it. It should be where you're sitting.
That's Sunny.
That's where Sonny was
Oh, this
originally
is Sonny.
sitting. It's,
right,
so I
Sonny.
had originally, sorry, Mayor, if I may, I had originally set it to where you guys were originally seated, and some had moved their seats around after.
Okay.
So I can verbally call that roll if you'd like.
Okay, please roll call then.
Okay. Sonny Brandt. Yes. Dave Pittman.
Here, yes.
Chrissy Riggs.
Yes.
Kent Fowler.
Yes.
Tracy Johnstone.
Yes.
Motion
Okay.
passed unanimously.
Thank you all. Appreciate the effort here. A hearing of individuals on non-agenda items. Do we have any non-agenda items in the room? Seeing none, we'll move to the next item, which is steering committee advisory members and staff comments.
Actually, we start with DWR.
Okay.
Eric?
Mr. C, how are you today? You're
Thank
live.
you.
It
Is
looks
that-
live.
Okay, we're going good. Great, it's nice to be here. Love to see the rain. This time of year, I love to see that coming down. So the lake is definitely coming up, which is really nice. Just some basic information about what's going on operationally. So the current lake elevation is 834.55. This was as of midnight last night. Flows of the Feather River are at 650 CFS through town here, and 1,750 CFS is flowing down the high flow channel. So that's where we get to collect the water from the afterbay, and that's what's going down downstream from there. Inflow. The 24-hour average from yesterday was 13,547. So that fluctuates, depending on where we are with the storms coming through. But prior to the storms, it was about 4,000 or so, 5,000, and with the storms, it jumped up. Actually, at a certain point, we were up in the tens of thousands. So right now it's at 13,000. So it's good. Lake is coming up. We're not at our flood reservation yet, but we're starting to knock on the door. So.
Did they have the spillway trial today, or?
There was a test. I actually was not in the office today, but they have been doing some just getting prep work. So they were going to open the spillway up and then close it just to make sure everything was operating okay. So I assume that occurred today. So. Okay, and so Bob had handed something out. I know Andy talked about this at the last meeting, but I did want to just present a touched up table about the allocations. This is a portion of the SBF section in the settlement agreement, and this is the section specific to 6.0 in the Supplemental Benefits Fund document, and it gets to the payment holdbacks that would occur in years when the water allocation was below 36%, basically 35% or less. So, yes, Sonny?
This is wonderful. We need to see the table that gives us, if we have the history on that, that lets us know what we can kind of count on what can happen to us in the future. Because those are severe cutoffs. If more than 10% of the power is lost, an equal amount of money is lost.
Right, I was going to get to that
when we
after
flooded the
this.
powerhouse, we lost the power from the powerhouse. All the power was gone. Now, what did that do to what we would have gotten?
Right, I was going
That's
to
the
cover that
information-
after we talked about this one,
Yeah.
Sonny, so.
Okay.
Okay, so, just a couple things I wanted to point out. So, this is triggered when the allocation is 35% or less, and it depends on where it is in that range. So, between 26% and 35%, if that's what the allocation is, then the payment for that year goes to $500,000. If it's below 25% or below, then it goes to a $300,000 payment in that year. And then what we do is we track that, and then in years where the payment or the allocation is 36% or above, then that money gets paid back, and it gets paid back in 5 equal payments. And the payments only occur in those years where the water allocation is 36% or higher. So I just wanted to point that out, that the money does get paid back. It's kind of it's going to be a complicated account, as you can see in this table, just because it gets paid back over 5 years, and you don't know in those 5 years. During that time, you might have some low water years along there, and that won't be a payment year. So you have to wait till the next time you have the higher water year. So we went back to 2008 and actually applied it to the allocations, and so you can see that column there. Those are the allocations in those years, and so just looking at 2008 gives you a good example of this. And we assume, if the license was issued in 2007 and the first payment would have been in 2008, that would have been a $500,000 a year payment year. So that means that there would be these residual payments that would need to get paid back, $500,000. So in 2009, it was a 40% allocation, so that would have been a repayment year. So there would have been the $1 million payment for 2009. In addition to that, there would have been the $100,000 repayment from 2008. In 2010, it was a 50% allocation year. So again, it would be the full million. Oh, and by the way, this is if it's a 50-year license term, it'd be a $1 million payment. Right. So you got through year 2012, but after 2012, there was a series of years where it would have been those short, those low water years. And so that last payment for 2008 wouldn't actually have come in until 2016. And by then, that you would have started having to pay residual payments for those low water years that occurred, in 2013, 2014, 2015. So anyways, and the other thing I wanted to point out is in this repayment schedule, this will go, the repayment of this will go beyond the 50th year if necessary. So it's actually in the document. So if there were residual payments that need to get paid, then that would continue on. It would extend on past the life of the license if necessary. So, okay, so that's on the water allocation side. So when it comes to the power side, which is in the next section, which is in section 8.0. So as Sunny had mentioned, what happens in this situation, this would be is if there was forced outages that caused a power loss with our power generation at Oroville, and if that power loss was over 10% of the total power that was created throughout the year. So we spent quite a bit of time working with our power operations folks to just figure out how we would calculate this. One of the things they pointed out was that how DWR works in the power market is different now than it was back in 2005, 2006 when this was negotiated. When we first explained this to them, they were like, "Well, how did this come? How did this come about? We don't track these outages."
I'd like to
in a
know
way
that too.
that would make it easy to figure this out. So as we talked about it more, in looking at what's in this paragraph, and what it really means is it's really where you have a forced outage, where you have a power loss, because you can have a forced outage where there's really not a power loss. I'll give you an example right now at Hyatt Power Plant, we're not running all of the units. So if you're running, because there's not a lot of water going through from Lake Oroville right now. So if you're using Unit 1 and all of a sudden Unit 1 got forced out, if Unit 2 is available, you just turn Unit 2 on and there's no power loss. So in that situation, you would have a forced outage. So that would be marked as a forced outage for Unit 1, but that's not a forced outage resulting in a power loss. So that's where it starts to get really tricky, is trying to figure out, okay, when are you having those times? Because we don't operate Hyatt Power Plant 24/7. That's not the way that we work in the power market. We do peak power operations, and we do a lot of intricate of actions in the power market nowadays, and it's things that we weren't doing back in that time period in 2005, 2006. So long story short, we had several meetings with our power operations folks, and they said that the likelihood that this would ever happen would be very remote. But if it did happen, we could start tracking it. We figured out a way we would do it, but you'd have to go back every time you had a power outage, or a forced outage, you'd have to then look at what the circumstances are at the time you had that forced outage, and then make a determination on whether or not there was a power loss. Because again, as I said, Unit 1 goes out. If you have Unit 2 available, you just turn that on and it goes. And also, what the unit run time would have been during that period of time that you had the outage. If it was a 24-hour outage and then it was put back on, if you only would have generated for an hour during that period of time with that unit, really it's only a loss of 1 hour. It's not a loss of 24 hours. And so our power operations folks said that they could determine that, but it would just take a lot of staff time in order to do that. And so they started, asking me about, well, how much is this worth really? When you get right down to it, okay, how much would it be? How much power loss would you have if you had an instance over 10% of your total power generation for the year? And they started just doing some rough calculations on the amount of staff time it would take to actually be able to track that, and they were saying it probably would approach a full PY, full position, to be able to do that. They'd have to dedicate somebody, full time to be able to tease out, to go back to the operator logs, find out, when the outage happened exactly and how it happened. And so, so they said that they could do it, but it'd probably be best to do it if you have a situation where you have like some catastrophic type of a situation where you would have a power, you would have a major generation loss. And it would be at that point you would trigger that, and you could start tracking it. And so I spoke with Jonathan Young about this a couple of times, and so he said that they would definitely want us to be factoring that in. You wouldn't want to spend $200,000 in labor to result in a $20,000 or $30,000 shortage on the SBF payment. It just wouldn't make any sense to do something like that. So it probably, would be something we'd take up with them as well. And certainly we would notify the committee if we ever were in a year where we had some catastrophic event where power operations were hindered significantly, from a forced outage. So anyway, so it was an interesting exercise. I actually learned a lot about the power market activities at DWR that I had no idea this was going on behind the scenes, but that they are in these operations. But that was the bottom line. Is whereas it was pretty straightforward to be able to put this table together for based on the water allocations, because it's data that we have readily available, and it was easy to be able to go back and work that through. It would be a much bigger task to be able to do that with our power operations, and so
Why didn't we take that paragraph out?
Well, I mean, that's not something I can really speak to, Sonny. It's if
Yeah, so you can take the money, but you can't tell us how you take it. We can't monitor how you take it.
well, we would provide a
we
full
don't-
accounting if we were to do that deduction in that paragraph. We would definitely provide a full accounting, and we know how theoretically how we would do it.
Once the money's gone, you'll tell us.
Well, I think as.
No, that's not correct. If we did do the deduction, we would provide an accounting of the deduction.
Yeah.
I think maybe the thing for the future, as you're explaining this to us, may be that DWR offer a clarification on how that works and how today, the thing that was negotiated back when this contract was negotiated, that we have, what you're saying, basically, it maybe not be worth its time and effort to do that or calculate it. And then as that is an addendum to the agreement, so we all understand what you're saying there, which your explanation is really good. I appreciate that and appreciate the work for it. And I think when the contract was negotiated, nobody really thought that was an issue, because I believe the perception was that power plant was running 24/7. That's the perception. And whenever it had a hindrance, they said, oh yeah, we're gonna have to, back off. Well, that isn't the reality. Today's reality, which is 17, years later, or actually, longer, it just might be a clarification be added to it, because then it makes everything pretty simple. And I think we could do that as a simple clarification or definition of the term, or your definition of section 8.0 might be better to.
Okay, so.
Yeah, you see where I'm getting at.
Right, because, I do know in the settlement agreement there's that explanatory
Right.
statement section of and it's
Yeah.
actually very short on this
Yeah.
item. It doesn't really describe it. I
No.
was hoping it was going to be described in there and be a lot easier for me to show our power folks, how it
The other thing
operated.
I wanted to mention too, that this graph is great, but it's a hypothetical.
Right,
Everybody needs to understand, and to the folks on the recording, it's a hypothetical SBF funding. So we're not talking about any money that came. It's just to understand, if the license is issued, this is where we would be, and this is what the process would happen. So that.
right, yeah, so we just
appreciate
applied it to, say the license had been issued in 2007, and, we
Right.
just applied it to that, the last, whatever it is, 16, 17 years. And, I also should point out, this is the $1 million a year payment portion of the SBF fund. There's other elements where there's lump sum payments that have already been distributed. I actually have that in a box at the bottom of this. But yeah, there's been over $11 million that has already been provided. But
Right.
this is what's going to happen once the new license is issued. It's going to trigger that part of the funding of the SBF.
Gotcha. Any questions from the board, or you have more to talk about?
Well,
No, that was it. I'll take that back as an action item. Just writing a narrative about the
Yeah.
what we're discussing right now. And
Be good to, so everyone is informed about it, and
Sure.
especially as it's fairly complicated, but it's simple at the other end of it, because it's what it was then, and now is what the reality, because, and I remember the discussion, everybody thought all 6 power units would be running 24/7. Well, that's just not real. It doesn't happen, and the power market and it used to be that 3 of the units would pump water back into the lake.
well, yeah, and I was going to say,
That's
would always do power peaking, but just the way the power market works. I mean, there's parts I couldn't even understand when they were explaining it to me about the day ahead, bidding process, and the way that we purchase and the way we bid power is different.
Right.
So you get into the potential for having units available, and there's there's value there with your unit availability. And I can't even speak to it accurately, but it's very intricate, and it's not nearly as straightforward as it used to be, the way that the DWR was in the power market.
Right.
And we don't do pump back right now. Now we have the capability of doing it. It's just because of the power market, and also problems we have with water temperatures in the summertime, where it would really be valuable. You start pulling that warm water, and it affects the hatchery temperatures and the temperatures in the Feather River. So for to protect fish, so we haven't been able to do that.
Yeah. The other clarification I think we should add too, does this calculations, is it only for the Edmondson power plant and Thermalito, or both?
It's only, so there's Hyatt, Thermalito, and Thermalito Diversion Dam. So, so it would just be for the Oroville facility. So it would be the complex here in Oroville.
the entire
Not our other
complex.
power generation facilities further down the,
Two powerhouses would be involved here.
three, yeah.
Yeah, the three.
Yeah, there's a small one at the Thermalito Diversion Dam right above the fish hatchery. There's that small power plant there.
Isn't there someone in the organization that could make a rough estimate, give us some idea? What-
Yes,
Don't-
just,
Don't get so technical.
you know.
Just that we know that when the dam flooded, the units were down. So whatever is anticipated during that time, when the powerhouse burned up in Thermalito, we didn't generate power for
That's-
X number of months. Well,
Thermalito
these-
would
These are general
Right.
things.
Thermalito would have been potentially a situation, right, where this would have applied. When we had the spillway emergency, it was only a short period of that year where the power plant was down. And because it was such a wet year, we generated a lot of electricity that year, because we were running high flows for, throughout the spring, way late into the summer. We had to bring the lake level down to do the reconstruction of the spillway. So we actually generated a lot of electricity that we wouldn't have even normally done if that circumstance hadn't happened. So you have a short period of time where it was out, but then you have this other period of time, much longer, where you're generating at a higher rate, and you're doing it during the summertime when power generation is worth a lot more. So there's these multiple factors that go into making that kind of a analysis. That and then trying to apply it to this, where really what this is about is where you have an outage that leads to a power generation loss. That's the key. So. Possibly with the Thermalito outage, there would have been, there would have been a triggering of it. But that, is, again, that's, we've operated for a long time without having a power plant burn down. I mean, the likelihood of that happening is it's there, it can happen, but it's very, very remote.
Good. Nice presentation. Any questions? Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. And this is this is something I appreciate seeing it, because we've heard it, but now it's on paper. You can understand the process that would occur had the license been issued.
Right, and I envision really this table, or something similar to, we might touch it up or make some tweaks here and there, but this will be probably a regular. Once we get into these payments, we'll probably once a year or twice a year go back to this table and just look to make sure where we are on the table, what's still owed, and what where we are. And one of the things I just mentioned about this is. The allocation comes out in May. So we do these allocations, they get updated. We start out, in December, and they get updated. And the May is the final one. And then the payment would need to occur before the end of June. So we would basically, we would take, as soon as that May payment would happen, we'd know, where, what the check amount is going to be. And so we'd be making that payment before the end of June. So within a month of the allocation announcement.
Very good. Very informative. State water contractors, are they next? Jonathan's not here. Do we have him online, maybe? No? Okay. State parks, Aaron, how are you today?
Good. How are you?
Excellent.
Good. So we're weathering this storm pretty well. So start off with that. It's positive. Our fleet's looking really good, which first time I can say in a while. So our staff are doing an amazing job with that. We are still super low staff is a big issue for us. And I think just something of interest for this group is we updated our special event program and some of our policies. And I know there's been a lot of misinformation or confusion with especially like the fishing tournaments. And so we've answered a lot of questions and calls. And so far, everyone we've talked to, especially locally, have supported it once they understand. And so what we're doing is we have raised fees for certain things. But the biggest thing in what we're doing is we're increasing, or we're doing a participant fee for the fishing tournaments. which is going to capture the day use fees as well as just being part of that event as a way of we're doing the revenue. But that money is staying with a special event program here locally. And so that's one of the big benefits. It makes it easier on us because most of these events are super early in the morning. And so if we don't have staff or we can't get staff, which we're concerned about with the minimum wage going up, this will allow to make sure everybody's been paid, taken care of, and so they can have a smoother opportunity to come in and out. And so those are kind of the big benefits. And it's just with everything going up, that's kind of how we haven't done it in over 10 years. And so we kind of had to adjust it. And so, but the benefit, like I said, the funding now stays with the local area. We are doing a discount for the tournaments and for all the special events. So typically going into the park would be $13 to launch, and we're only charging the tournament directors $10. So that way it benefits them in that way. The only really negative side that we've been getting from some of the fishermen from outside the area typically has been that if they already have an annual pass, well, why can't we waive that fee? And the annual passes are meant for day use and launching. People are coming for a tournament, they're part of that event, and so it's a participant fee. So if a coordinator wants to come in and have a big fishing tournament, and then they can pay that fee, and they're basically paying for those people coming in.
Gotcha.
We're doing the same thing with the aquatic center, and they're prepaying for their visitation. And again, like one of the big benefits for us locally is that money now stays with the special event program, which stays local, versus just going to the general fund. But again, it originally came out that we were charging the participant fee and the day use fees. So people thought they were having to pay like $23 to come in. That's not the case. It's just the one fee for being a participant fee. So.
Now, your participant fee is for the day of the event.
Correct.
And so I know the fishermen, they pre-fish and post-fish. That's on their own pass if they have that.
Correct. And that's still the same as it was. If they come in the day before to fish and they have annual pass, they can use it. It doesn't preclude them from using it for anything else.
Okay.
And even the tournaments that run 2 days consecutively, it's one pass. We're not trying to charge them daily. It's
Gotcha.
If you're coming in for a tournament and they're actually running it for 2 days, then your pass will be good for both days. So.
How many ballpark, how many tournaments a year do you think we're having up there now?
It's been fluctuating a lot. I mean, I know before COVID, I want to say we were at almost 25, 30 events. And then during COVID, it really dropped. And then last year, it jumped up again. I would say we probably had 15 to 20 of the bigger ones.
Yeah.
And this year, I think we're going to be about the same. One of the biggest impacts we've had is a lot of new coordinators. So after COVID, everybody we've been dealing with for 8 years kind of left.
Yeah.
Some of them are just fishing in the tournaments now. And so it's kind of been a learning process for a lot of groups because unfortunately, the way the state works, it's super confusing for everybody, even ourselves. Because even within state parks, Lake Orville's handled differently than Folsom Lake because Folsom is part of the Bureau of Land Management. And they have an agreement with the Bureau that they get all the funds that go through that park and it all goes back into the park. So how they handle their special events is a little bit different than we do. Shasta is a federal lake, but it's run by a concession. And so they handle, depending on where you're out on Shasta Lake, differently. Yeah. Lake County is a lake that belongs to Lake County. And so every area, unfortunately, is a little bit different. And Fish and Game, years ago, it kind of stopped telling anybody anything because they can't keep up either.
Yeah.
And so people get their fishing permits, their fishing game permit to do their tournaments, and they don't realize that it's different everywhere. And so we've been kind of helping a lot of the new fishing coordinators understand. And so what we do, our staff, is they go through and they proactively look for the fishing tournaments to reach out to them. So that way we can prevent anybody from having a violation or last minute, oh, you can't have your tournament. And so staff reaches out, and that's usually what starts the process. So any questions with that or for the parks?
I guess, and you probably can't even answer this question, but how, the reflection of the budget going on right now, and I mean, are there any things that's going to affect this particular unit here or your predictions?
As far as the budget goes, I don't see the budget affecting us. I think the minimum wage going up is going to be the big impact. Most of our seasonal staff, like the park aides, while they got a raise to go with the start of the year, it hasn't offset it. So they're still starting out at $16.50 or something in that ballpark. And so I think once we hit March and the Taco Bells and fast food areas are making $20 an hour for minimum wage, we had trouble competing when we were the same. So I imagine that's going to cause us
Oh, yeah.
some struggles to recruit, retain. I think we'll still get candidates and we'll still be okay because some people just don't want to work fast food. Some people like working for the parks, and so I think we'll get some candidates, but I think it'll make it harder because I think financially, most of those positions are seasonal, and so it's only for a season typically.
Yeah.
And so when you're comparing to other places where they're paying higher and it's year round, or we're asking them to commute to Lime Saddle where it's a longer drive,
Yeah.
I think we might struggle a little bit with that, but we'll see. I think last year we ended up doing fairly well with hiring and staffing with the seasonals. So I don't know. That's our big concern right now. And so we're kind of preparing and trying to find out ways that we can still help the public without impacting or minimizing the staffing needs that we have. Does that help or?
Yeah, it's not really our purview of the SBF, but how's the houseboat community doing up there? They all back on the lake and, or,
Yeah.
yeah?
We had, what was it, 150 houseboats during the drought that got pulled. To my knowledge, I have 2 houseboats waiting to be taken off site, and everything else has been taken care of.
That's good.
We've had, I want to say there's like 4 houseboats that they gave away that the owners just kind of walked away from.
Really?
For the most part, everybody kind of took care of what they needed to, and I think the marina's already started the inspections for the on-the-water houseboats, and we're already seeing a better or more proactive houseboat owners getting their houseboats in better shape, because one of the struggles that we have is it's an old marina, and so we have a lot of houseboats that have been on there for 30, 40 years almost, and they haven't been really taken care of, and because of all the disasters and the droughts and the changing of the marinas, it's been hard to enforce a lot of that stuff. And so the new marinas are doing really well with getting their customers to comply and understanding why it's important to all of us that they take care of their houseboats, they get them off in time. So I think things are going in a really positive direction, and I haven't had any, knock wood, I haven't had many main complaints. I know we've talked, and we probably will never use the parking lots, at least in my tenure, for storage again.
Let's hope not.
So, but I think we're doing pretty good. Like I said, they're all back out,
Yeah.
and all the parking lots are back open, and they were last summer. We had like 4 or 5 lingering ones over the winter, and those were all resolved before the beginning of this year.
Yeah.
So,
All right. Any questions of the state parks?
Thank you.
No, thank you. Appreciate that, Eric. Aaron. Chamber of Commerce. Well, sure. I will defer to the boss. Oh, ooh, watch it, yeah. Yeah. Amber, anything to let the SBF know about?
Sure, I'll just make a quick report. Mr. Happy.
What's your letter?
Oh, yeah, sure. Thank you very much. So I'll just read, I had written a letter to the SBF since our SBF contract has ended, and now we just have to wait for the FERC relicensing. So I just wanted to say we want to graciously thank you for your support over the years. We would like to take this time to give you a summary of our 2023 activities that we did with the SBF funding. 2023, thanks to your support, we were able to keep updating the visitoroville.com with the signature events pages. These pages received thousands of visits throughout the year and helped to keep the community as well as tourists informed of the upcoming annual community events. We also continued to promote all Oroville events through our various Facebook pages. These promotions gained anywhere from 200 900 to 10,000 reach per post. Lastly, thanks to your support, the Visitor Center remained open from 9 a.m. to 3 p.m. Monday through Friday. Throughout the year, we receive hundreds of phone calls and walk-ins, and I forgot to include thousands of emails asking about the Oroville community. We were able to give these visitors and potential future Orovilleans information that make them fall in love with Oroville. We want to thank the Supplemental Benefits Fund Committee for their continued support throughout the years to help us promote Oroville to the community and outside of it. And so we just really wanted to thank you for your support. Until FERC gets relicensed, we are still going to keep Visit Oroville open. We're just adjusting how we do that. Probably just the major change that will happen due to the lack of SBF funding is we used to promote all community events. Now we're going to kind of veer back into a chamber members only, although our community calendar will still be open to anyone and everyone. So, any questions?
Question, Amber.
Awesome.
What is the 2024 anticipated funding for the chamber from?
Zero.
0.
Yep, we're out. Yep. But once the FERC license gets re-signed, we're written into that to get $60,000 a year for this type of activity. Yeah, settlement, sorry.
The
So-
first license, 2,100.
Yeah, that.
We anticipate that.
Well, you know, on that accord, I will actually refer to our city administrator, Mr. Ring, and let him give a report, if you wouldn't mind. Oh, yeah, yeah. Go ahead.
Yep, just really quickly, I know the
Thank you, everyone.
No, thank you, Amber. Yes.
The council sent a letter back in, gosh, it's been, I want to say September, October, it's been a number of months, requesting an update from FERC on the license. And with that, I've been following up with, actually, I forwarded the letter off to FERC, and I've been able to access a couple of representatives back there that are responsive with me. So I've been pinging them about every 2 weeks just to kind of say, hey, is there an update? You know, it's been a long time here. And actually Monday this week, I think they responded and stated specifically that they're currently, based upon their environmental impact study, they are still doing environmental work on endangered species that were identified within that study. And that's, in a nutshell, that's, so long story short, environmental work and no indication on when it's going to be issued.
Right. But at least they're responding to him. We haven't got responses before in the past, so.
That was open-ended response, right? And I will continue to follow up very nicely every few weeks, just to, you know, anything new to share. Because I mean, you're not the only person. There's a lot of folks in the community. I mean, there's a lot of things waiting on this license to be issued.
Yeah. Well, I
Yeah,
believe
and
the rec district also sent a similar communication, and others have been sending communications. I believe DWR even sent one, if I remember.
Yeah, I think that helps. I mean, DWR sent multiple letters over the year,
Yeah.
over the years, advocating to have the license issued as soon as possible. So, yeah, I think it helps just to, keep the issue, on their front burner. I don't know what else to say about it.
Yeah.
Just.
We're dealing with a bureaucratic situation that has a 5-member board, and 2 are one party and 2 are the other, and the 5th position has not been appointed.
Yeah.
That's the other problem.
So does everything come to a halt as far as water transfers and state water contracts and DWR some water?
No, so we have a current license. We have an existing license that will continue. They just until the new license is issued, we just operate under the terms of the current license. So the new other than what was in the settlement agreement, where it was identified for early implementation before the license issuance, such as the SBF. Most of the SBF, that we've, well, I should say, let me back up. The SBF work that we've done so far is all part of the activities that were required to happen prior to license issuance. There's one element where DWR voluntarily agreed to advance money to the committee. So what's waiting now, when the new license is issued, as far as the SBF, it's going to trigger the $1 million a year payments. So all of those other payments have now been distributed to the SBF.
I see Councilman Johnstone is on the queue.
I think Chrissy beat me to it.
My ghost is on.
Yeah.
Okay, Chrissy, go ahead.
Eric, Mr. C, one of the things you said was that we have a temporary license that allows you to operate as if we had a license aside from the $1 million a year funding. And so I just want to point that out and then tell you again that you could continue to voluntarily operate underneath that license and provide that funding as you did earlier with the previous voluntary payments, which were very much appreciated.
We I know that issue has been raised, and my management decided to not make any additional advance payments until the new license is issued.
So who should we talk to?
That's my management's decision. So
That's a state water contractor's issue.
well, yeah, I mean water contractors as well, but it would start with my management.
Lenny,
But
do you have
I just wanted to clarify one thing though. So it's not a temporary license. It is it's our we have a. Back in 1957, we made an application for a FERC license. It was a 50-year license. It ended in 2007. And so what's typical with what FERC will do is if they're only relicensing and they haven't issued the new license yet, then they just continue to allow the existing license to operate on its terms. So we're just continuing with the existing license that we've had, for the last, 60 some odd, do the math from 1957.
67 years now.
Yeah,
It's
so-
67.
Here's,
Lenny, go ahead.
here's our problem. The water's flowing. And not only is it flowing, they're paying more than they paid before. The price goes up. And so the water contractors are making out. They're not paying the $1 million a year for recreation that was lost. Bedrock Park isn't what it was. Our community center for recreation's gone forever unless they pull the dam down. And the time goes by, the original payments were for goodwill to the community. That's what built Riverbend Park. Water contractors and Department of Water Resources wanted to get good community relations. We're going to put upfront money, and then we'll give you, the story was, you're going to get $1 million a year. And you can see how many years we've gone, and you can see what we've gotten. We've got 12 million dollars. Thank you. But our park isn't back. And the water's flowing. And the cost's going up. Why do you mark us out now and say we're going to shut you off and keep the money that we would have been paying you had FERC approved a license? Then you'd had to pay us. Now you don't have to pay us, so you don't. Now it's the water contractors, I'm sure, that don't want to pay because it increases their bottom line. Better profit. Why should we pay? We don't have to. Now we've got so much good relations with the community of Orville. We've given them so much. Their community is a recreation boom. People come from all over the state. Millions come to the dam. Their community should be jingling in money and recreation. But I don't see it downtown. I don't see it with the little kids. And water contractors are not buying too much goodwill with me. And conversely, DWR doesn't when they don't stand up for the fact that the recreation's gone and the money that was pledged basically because they took our recreation and river out of the middle of our town, the money they pledged is gone too. And if they stick with this, I mean, better for them if they never finish a license. They just go year to year. They gotta be feeling fat and sassy.
Yes, sir. Oh, yeah, please. Councilman, go ahead. Sure. Yes,
No
Tracy.
response.
Thank you. So forgive me for not being fully educated on FERC and just the SBF benefits, but what is is there not something that SBF or DWR or anybody can do for FERC or to FERC to kind of push this into, I know we've been waiting 17 years, but it sounds like they're getting DWR or whoever is getting water, and FERC is just, like you said, there's two on both
Right.
sides of it. I mean, is there anything that we can do as a city to kind of persuade them to license? I don't know.
Well, I think the council's letter that Mr. Ring mentioned was a
Went in
step.
August.
Yeah, it went in August, and that has never been done since this thing. And the SBF is a product of the agreement. It doesn't really have any other issues other than that we have to follow the terms of the agreement. The big issue is with FERC, the issue of the license now, and I'll just add a short bit of history. When FERC issued the license, recreation, it was only for power generation. It had nothing to do with recreation. Then later along, the Congress passed some rules that said that these licenses have to have a recreation component. That opened the door to make this thing a bigger thing than we ever conceived. I attended a water conference in Sacramento, and all the other agencies that are doing these licenses could not believe how big this thing was here. This was 12 years ago, and they couldn't believe they were waiting, sitting around waiting so long. I think it lies in the Congress of the United States to make that agency perform. I hate to say it, but that's the reality here. And Suddy's comments are well taken, and they are accurate. We're sitting here in this no man's land of what do? We have to sit and wait for them. I mean, we're stuck behind the rule of law in some respects, but the rule of law doesn't make common sense.
So there's nothing that we can hold back or do, to kind of push FERC into?
Other than send them a nice letter every Friday.
Public pressure.
Yeah, just stay on the top of their mind. And I don't know, Mr. Chair, Eric, if DWR, if there is an appetite, I don't know if the SBF would want to write a letter to DWR to see if DWR would like to start making payments. Do you think, would that resonate with management?
Well, if you would like to ask, you certainly can. I think the best way to do it would be to put it in a letter. It was asked, a couple of years ago, and I brought it up with my management, and they declined to do that. They decided that we provided that extra $4 million lump sum payment, which actually was supposed to wait until the new license was issued, but they didn't want to go any further than that until the new license was issued. But I can pass it on to my management, and we'll
I
see
think
what they
the
say.
SBF is really not a mechanism to do it because we have rules we have. Now, the city or the rec district can certainly do what you mentioned, and then that may be something for the city council to forward and say, you know what, guys, this is just going on too long, and we've already asked FERC to respond, and this biological thing. I mean, we heard the fish thing for what, years? And it just
Decade ago.
It just
I think I think this is about the what's going on, the environmental document for the spillway emergency and the work that's been done to rehabilitate the hillside up there, and there was some Endangered Species Act analyses that were conducted that was sent to FERC, and I think that's the process they're still working through. So They hadn't decided even before any of that happened. They still were kind of dragging their feet. So
interesting thing, in California, we have the public records request process. And if that agency was in California, we could request all the records that they have.
the feds have that too.
It doesn't exist in the federal.
No, it does.
Oh, it does?
Yeah, it's called FOIA, but I'll say when DWR, periodically when we're on at a meeting with FERC, we always bring it up about when's the license going to get issued, and they can't tell us. It's a part of their process. They can't, do communications with, directly with DWR about that. So they just, they just say, we can't talk about it, and that's it. Nonetheless, we do ask about it. We do push for it. We do, like I said, we've sent a lot of correspondence to FERC extolling the virtues of the settlement agreement and the, benefits it would bring to the community, environmentally and, recreation as well. I mean, there's a whole incredible environmental program in that document. Well, it's not just recreation.
Right,
So,
right.
so we, I've been anxiously awaiting it. I, can't wait to implement those projects. We're doing what we can right now with, within the confines of the existing license, but,
Blaine, do you
not
have
much we
another
can do.
question?
Yeah, well, I just wanted to add on that letter that Tracy suggested we might consider a letter to Water Resources. It would have to go to the water contractors too, because that's where the water ends up, and that's where the money starts out.
Yeah,
The people that buy the water pay for the water.
right.
To the water contractors, they pay Water Resources, and then it's distributed up here if we're ever gonna get it.
Yeah,
But,
yeah.
heaven forbid it, not be up to us to ask for what we deserve
Right.
to them and bring it to the point that, yeah, they got goodwill with their original down payments and the first 11 million, but,
Yeah.
that goodwill won't pass. And we appreciate the mitigation for the lost recreation picking up without a license. We don't need a license to take the money, and you don't need a license to give it to us.
Okay. As I sit as the mayor of the city, I will give direction with Councilman Johnstone's second that we'll have an issue brought forth and we'll agendize it for the city council to produce such a letter.
Yes.
Okay? So carried. All right. Yes, go ahead. Eric, you want to speak? Well, we were just finishing the Chamber of Commerce report. If you want to add to that, we'll do that.
I was listening on the other side to some of the comments, and, obviously this is a long drawn-out conversation we've had over and over again. Coming off the International Sportsman's Expo in Sacramento this past weekend, a lot of focus obviously is on anadromous fish, the impacts with, climate change, and then this apparently is going to be the second year that we're not going to allow sport fishing for salmon and or commercial fishing. That looks like where we're headed. And so when it comes to, what are the potential, how we can lean on FERC or lean on in terms of looking towards getting the license signed, I think, as much as the SBF's impacted $1 million a year sounds like a lot of money, but this is over $1 billion commitment, right? And a lot of the money is towards the environment, and in particular, of course, dealing with the impacts on the fishery, the salmon, anadromous fish. There was a committee set up by DWR a couple of years ago, TAG, and it was looking at how to deal with the impacts of warming water on the fish. And as we know, you have the fish, you have die-off when the water gets too warm. Right now, obviously, that's probably not a problem because there's plenty of water flowing, but on low water years, the water gets too warm. And in particular, the Thermalito complex, the whole purpose of that is to warm the water for the rice growers, but it's bad for the fish. And so in that study, one of the things that was looked at was a pipe to pipe the water to move it through the Thermalito complex to keep the water temperature down for the fish. I say all of that because the irony is FERC is saying, well, we're looking at environmental impact 17 years later. And to further, I think, exemplify or to highlight the irony of that, as a state, we tout ourselves as being very environmentally conscious, right? In all of the various policies that California sets in the motion to be environmentally conscious. It's almost, there's an element of hypocrisy here, because tied to that are dollars that can deal with the environment to help the fish, and that's not happening. So if we have drought, warming water, we have no process or method to address it, which can cause die-off and further impacts on the salmon, and I know that the spring run is already potentially running into becoming an endangered species, potentially. And so I think some of this is a political solution, because if we really have a heart for the environment, for the impacts of the fish, then we're going to get this thing signed, because then those dollars can be released in projects like the water, the pipe through the Thermalito complex, if that in fact becomes a solution, or perhaps another one. Those projects can't happen until this license is signed. And so this is a disaster for the environment ready to happen. So the next series of poor performing hydrological years, and then our water warms and we lose all of our fish. And right there's the solution, but we're not implementing that solution because we're not getting the license signed. And so to me, the hypocrisy is, and you ask the question, well, who's in charge? Well, our governor is at the top of the food chain with DW. Department of Water Resources is the department of the state of California. And so I think at the highest echelons of our political system should be leaning on FERC to get it done, because it's impacting all of us. It's impacting the fish. It's impacting the ocean. And, you know, as much as I like the idea of $1 million a year, this is way bigger than Orville. This impacts the entire West Coast. This is huge. And why we're not raising the alarms and, you know, clanging the cymbals and all of that, because our heart bleeds for the environment, is beyond me. But I think somewhere in there is probably a solution and a conversation that the entire state of California should be having about what is the best solution moving forward, and getting those dollars released for our environment, for Pete's sake. We are California, right? And we care about that stuff, right? I would think. So to me, in there, you know, nobody really cares about our tourism and our local economy. When I say we care, but LA don't care, Bakersfield doesn't care, you know, the growers don't care. We care, but they should care about the environment. And so to me, somewhere in there, letters, campaigns, conversation, hey, California, put your actions where your mouth is, if we really want to talk about the environment. And, you know, we're bringing out electric vehicles and we're doing all these things and we're feeling some pain, right, with some of these decisions. Then this seems to me a small price to pay to get the license across the finish line. Anyway, thank you.
Good point. Thank you, sir.
Thank
Good
you.
point. Yeah.
That's what I'm talking about.
Yeah, good point. Do we have anything from Mr. Steindorf, real quick, just to ask, because he's on the agenda? No?
Dave Steindorf?
Yeah.
No.
Okay. Then Mr. Marciniak.
Yes, thank you. Well, one thing, the appropriate agency to write the letter to DWR is the city of Oroville.
Right.
They are in a contract with DWR.
Sure.
And that contract, as Eric has said, has technically expired with the $11,270,000 being paid. But it would seem to me that would be the appropriate agency.
Right.
And then as far as myself, just a couple things. I continue to work on the refinement of the SPF webpage. I'm also beginning to relook at the 5-year review of the Regional Fund Strategic Plan. For those that are newer to the SPF, the Regional Fund Strategic Plan is, for lack of a better word, the Bible of how this particular group functions and how they ultimately pass money out to the community. We have a couple of expired grants with the Downtown Business Association. I'm trying to bring those to closure. One from 2021 that was never fully funded. And then the other one is their current one for the Miners Alley revitalization. That expired the end of 2023. There is some funds left in both of those grants. And if the DBA is unable to provide the documentation of funds spent during the timeline of the grant, then the unspent money will go back into the SPF unencumbered money. Gotcha. and it totals about 15,000 between the two grants. So I'm trying to work on that. Open grants, Park District, we still have the Brad Freeman Trail. It did have an extension to February 1st of 2025. So the pressure maybe to get it done isn't there, but we really need to get moving on that. The other open grant is to the Oroville Rotary Club, $100,000, the Light the Bridge project. It expires July of this year, okay? So, and I will have, actually at the next meeting, I'll have an update on both of those grants, where we are and hopefully where we're going, okay?
All right, thank you, sir.
Thank you.
The next item on the agenda is to, now we look at the consent calendar. Any board members have any questions on the consent calendar? All right. I'll move for, entertain a motion to approve that.
A motion to approve the consent calendar.
I'll second.
Okay, roll call, please.
Sunny Brandt,
Yes.
Dave Pittman,
Yes.
Chrissy Ricks,
Yes.
Kent Fowler,
Yes.
Tracy Johnstone.
Yes.
Yes.
Motion passes unanimously.
Presentation and updates.
Okay, so I have a PowerPoint, fairly short. It's called Follow the Money. We'll get it up here on your screens in a minute. And sometimes beginning to think that my presentations are anticlimactic to the reports that people are doing, because the reports kind of had a little bit of a negative tone to it. I prefer to kind of spin this a little more positively. We thank DWR for the $11,270,000, and as Eric has reminded us, I think on more than one occasion, they were under no complete issue to pay the 4 million some odd dollars that they ended up doing until the FERC license was signed. So we did get $11,270,000.
Okay.
Okay, over here? Yeah, could you? Thank you. Okay, so we have a little technical difficulty. Kayla?
Arrows on the screen, there you go.
There we go. Okay, so kind of interesting, I think, to look at the percentages of where the money went. You can see that grants to the Park District totaled 66.56%. That did include $5.2 million for the Phase 1 and 2 of Riverbend Park. Community grants, people that came in that replied to notices of funds available, totaled around 15%. The city of Oroville received 2%, Chamber 3%, event coordinator, and I have slides on all these, studies, administration, and a little tiny bit is unencumbered. Next slide. Okay, go ahead to the next one. Yeah. So the large projects that were actually done totaled $8,971,000. There's a complete listing of them. If you look at them, in every one of the items that the steering committee approved over the years did benefit the community. It benefited the ability of Oroville to attract visitors, to spend money. Okay, next slide. Just some pictures of things that, the State Theater, the Veterans Memorial, Riverbend Park, the Light the Bridge project, a really nice next picture, playground at Riverbend Park, and the rehabilitation of the Nelson Pool. I think it has a different name, though. There were various small projects. Okay, the Forebay was a large project, irrigation, both in irrigation at the golf course and irrigation wells in 2 locations, which actually ultimately benefited both of the parks. Small projects totaled $58,135. This was sort of in the beginning of the SBF that the small projects were done. They included things for children, the Kids at Risk sports program. Pottery project was buying a kiln for the Artists of Rivertown. Oroville YMCA, we did pool repairs back in 2008. City of Oroville, fire and rescue equipment. Chinese brick building, the landscaping near the Bolt Museum. The Oroville Branch Library, the conference room upgrades. Oroville Gone Wild, again, this was a program for children, especially those that had never seen had never, believe it or not, live in Oroville, but had never been up to Lake Oroville. So there was a group that came to the committee, asked for funds back in 2010, I believe, and they had 2 or 3 programs that got kids up to see the lake. Metal sculptures at the Nature Center, and marketing website and disc golf promotions for the Park District. Okay, next slide. It is working. Yeah.
Where's the eagle?
Eagle is hiding for some reason in the glass enclosure. The city's in the process of recarpeting everything, and perhaps when the carpeting's done, the eagle might fly out. I think one of the reasons it got put back there was a concern that somebody could bump into the stand that it's on. It's on a temporary base, but thank you. It's here, though.
I might mention that
It's watching the meetings, and that eagle, the SPF, put $5,000 into it. $5,000 additional came from matching funds and donations from Metalworks and others in the community. The artist at one time had an estimate of $50,000 for the value of it. The artist would really like to see it on top of a pole or on top of the Centennial Arbor, that it's supposed to develop a patina from the weather and not look like a real shiny eagle. I'm sorry, Chairman Pittman, I interrupted you.
Well, I wanted to add, because we're talking about the eagle, the artist that did that won an international award for that particular sculpture just recently. So that gave us a little notoriety in the art world.
Okay, there were 2 direct bequests, and they were the City of Oroville when they first established the municipal law enforcement program. The chief came and asked for funding for one MLE for 1 year, and that person in the initial year that actually did parks and trails, and they still drive through Riverbend. I see them every few days when I'm out walking. We also did brochures and Lake Oroville tourism maps. The event coordinator, this was during 2007 to 2023. The committee was approached and agreed to have to fund an event coordinator for the 5 major events in Oroville. They stopped funding that actually in 2021 and went to a different bidding program. And then since then, it has all continued to be just volunteer work. Just some pictures of the items. Chamber of Commerce, since the beginning, total had received $337,272. My next slide actually hits on what Amber talked about. The annual grant of $60,000 would go, once we begin receiving $1 million or whatever the amount is, the first $60,000 goes to the chamber, and the chamber then uses that for tourism and community activities to also promote the community. A few studies were done. One was required, the others were optional. The required study was the Regional Fund Strategic Plan, which I'm in the process of reviewing. It has a 5-year review period, so we're into the second 5-year review of it. The Whitewater study, that was funds that actually were done in conjunction with the city to determine if a whitewater park would work. The SBF website has really good links to all that and to the studies. The unfortunate thing is the cost is extremely high. And then I believe the thing that probably stopped it from continuing on was that how would you maintain it every year and how would you pay for it? The Feather River Conceptual Plan, that's actually in conjunction with the Regional Fund Strategic Plan. It ensures that there's a project focus, and we have the areas, 7 areas that detail where SBF funds go, and they actually have gone to those areas. And then the Brad Freeman Trail, a couple of separate studies. Admin, prior to my retiring, the SBF paid for a half-time employee to do this job. When I retired, the SBF then paid for a full-time employee for a few years, and then ultimately has come back to, I'm not calling it a wind down, but a maintenance of the SBF, facilitating it to 10 hours a month. Okay? So, what we really, I think, keep in mind is to really reach for new heights. We need to, this is a picture of a billboard on Highway 99 that SBF provides. Not SBF, excuse me, DWR provides, and they change those out on a periodic basis. They usually work with the Chamber of Commerce on design. And with that, I kind of finish this up, and if you had any questions, I think positively, I think we're so easy to say that we haven't spent any money or had any money. We've had it, we've spent it, and by God, we really need it, okay? And we need to get into a position where either the funding continues without the official new license or that the new license gets signed and we move forward.
Bob, I appreciate the presentation. Will that be available on the website?
It will.
Yeah.
Yes.
Good. That way the public, if they have an interesting
Yeah,
question about it, they can see the numbers and see a quick visual of how it all works.
Right. The SPF website is on the City of Oroville webpage. It's under government or under visitors. It's really very extensive and has a lot of good links in it. So I'd recommend that, that everyone take a look at it. And when people, ask about it, I usually refer them immediately to the website. Okay?
Got it.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Regular business, item number 4 is the amendment to the SBF Rules of Governance.
Okay, that is on page 57, voting members and advisors of your packet. This has come up from the last meeting. We were asked to come back with a resolution directing how correspondence that is discussed at a committee level, ultimately signed by the chair, and then sent out, how it should be reviewed. And so what I did was I put together a resolution. I noticed that, unfortunately, the one on page 58, where it says that it's going to be drafted and then sent back out for comments to the committee, what we would like to recommend, and this is just we, meaning myself and Brian here, is that it would go to the chair and the vice chair. The chair and the vice chair represent both components of the SBF. And because if we start trying to send out a drafted letter to 5 people looking for 5 comments, Tracy makes a comment, I make a change, I now need to send it back to the 5 of you to get you to agree on it. It's sort of like a perpetual unending chain of getting a letter out. We don't write a lot of letters from the SBF chair. Most of the letters or correspondence come from the program specialists or myself as the facilitator, and they are things like a letter to the memo or letter to ODBA,
Right.
clarifying an item.
Okay.
Those do not really require, I think, the scrutiny that is requested. So what we would like to do is ask for your opinion, but also ask for you to approve the resolution with the adjustment that the chair and vice chair would receive a draft and approve sending it out.
I have no problem with that. Anybody else? Comments or opinions?
We'll go ahead and move to approve the resolution 2024-01.
A second,
Call the roll, please.
with those adjustments, right, Mr. Fowler?
I'm sorry?
With the adjustments, Mr.
Yes.
Marshall?
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay.
With that, Sunny Brandt,
Yes.
Dave Pittman,
Yes.
Chrissy Ricks.
Yes.
Kent Fowler,
Yes.
Tracy Johnstone.
Yes.
Motion passes unanimously.
Thank you. Moving to item number 5, the Orville Trail System. Go ahead, Bob.
All right, thank you, David. At the last meeting, I was asked to bring back summary information about what's occurred with this request. And I believe, we did found a committee to, an ad hoc committee to Parks and Trails Committee. We have not officially met yet because there still seems to be some confusion on what that committee should or shouldn't do. Sonny had presented us with a draft letter of a JPA that dated back to 1996. We actually went through all of the city documents, both paper and microfiche, and could find that it was never presented as a city council item. And so a JPA was never really established. And what the other thing that I found, though, was that in 2000, the city created a bicycle, Orville Urban Area Bicycle Transportation Plan, and it listed the participants as the city, the Park District, State of California, Department of Transportation, and the U.S. Department of Transportation. And that particular item got approved, but there hasn't really been a bicycle trail completely finished. Caltrans is still, I believe, working on getting the 163 improvements finished. So the question, I think that discussion for the committee, if they would like to continue to discuss this, is should the SBF be involved in a Parks and Trail ad hoc committee, or should they stay to the items that they are supposed to be doing, which is funding projects to benefit the community and making sure that those projects that are funded are upheld? And with that, I'd open it to discussion from the committee and ask for direction.
Well, let me ask clarification. When you say the city did that trails and bikes study, and it made a recommendation that we have all those entities on some type of committee or as participants in that document?
Yes, and I believe that they are on that document, the 4 different.
So it sounds to me like maybe the city needs to bring that committee forward and maybe have a couple public forums to say, what does the public need for this particular item? That would, in my mind, that would be a better way to open the door, because bicycles have changed, folks. Now we got, I don't even think I had electric bikes in those days, and
No?
so maybe that's what the city ought to do, and then this body could certainly be a participant in that, but it sounds like the city needs to be the lead agency on that, given that we have the study that's in place for that, and it would value the study for any other grant improvements or grant projects, and maybe even BCAG might like to see that brought up so that we can get money from BCAG for that topic too. So maybe that's where we should go and bring that together.
Makes sense to me.
Well,
Yeah.
I had actually included in this particular staff report probably 30 or more pages of attachments showing that we do have a map, a great map, We do have information, some signage information, but not all of it.
Yeah.
It appears that each of the agencies have gone off and done something.
Yeah.
And I think what Sonny was after, correct me if I'm wrong, was a meeting or a group of all the agencies talking together,
Right.
coming to a conclusion.
Yeah.
But not the SPF running it, is kind of what
I
I'm
think
saying.
that's probably the best way to go, because then it also becomes a document that's publicly accessible for other things like the grant project and other things that, you know, if we're gonna ask for money from some of the other agencies around, it certainly would be the city's purview to do it, not, and the SBF shouldn't be doing that, so. I'd say we move forward with that, if everybody likes that
Well-
idea.
Oh, I would say Department of Transportation, maybe. But what's really critical to me is the 167 miles of lake shoreline that we have. There's another 16 miles from the diversion pool down through the city of Orville. There's another 10 miles around the after bay, or 26 miles around the after bay, 10 miles around the forebay. That's 219 miles of shoreline. And the Supplemental Benefit Fund was formed for recreation, socioeconomic development. And I think this is one of the biggest opportunity areas that we have. But the majority of the property is in the state. And so it's very important that the state's maybe number one in it. But number two is the recreation district. We're charged with providing recreation, outdoor recreation. The major provider of outdoor recreation is parks and trails, outdoor hiking, riding, running, jumping, equestrian, motorcycle, whatever, trails. And we're sitting on a little jewel here, and I don't think we're maximizing the use of it. And we want to help the state, and we want them to help us, but we want to coordinate our activities. And we want to jointly determine where our main bases of operation are. And to me, it just seems logical that we have some kind of attraction along the freeway that everybody comes by and sees this jewel we have. And they can pull in and pull the bike off of their car or their recreation vehicle.
And I think the mechanism, if, with the city working with Butte County Association of Governments, they have some money for bike trails that we're gonna be doing on Highway 162 here this year, actually, as part of that improvement, which is along the roadway or dam. So that's where we ought to take that body and work off BCAG and get the federal money that's coming to bikes and trails to bring here to the community. That's why I think that's this idea with the city and the rec district being lead agency with that agency to bring the money here. And then this SBF, if the projects come up, then the SBF certainly should fund them as necessary and as can be. But that way we get everybody in the same bucket. And I think that the city probably could take the lead to put that together and run off of the existing trails study that was done and build upon that, if I'm thinking right here.
Yeah, no, and it's interesting. It looks like there's some jurisdictions, I'm not sure, again, it's happened 23 years ago, so I'm not sure why they weren't included in this study, like DWR and state parks and,
Yeah.
and Fish and
That's
Wildlife.
true, yeah.
And maybe it's, because it seems like everybody has been doing their own, or based on what I've heard the last few meetings, it's we'd like to see more coordination, if at all possible. So maybe this is a way to
Yeah.
facilitate that. Then obviously, coordination, and then have a more uniform
Right.
application for funding, whether it's through BCAG or the SBF.
Yeah. Or DWR or statewide, anybody. I mean, anybody in the world can participate in that contribution. And so that makes sense to me if the body likes that conversation. And certainly anything that this body's brought up should be brought up in that same conversation. Added to it, not.
there was a very active Orville Bicycle Association. And I know the state has had meetings with bicyclers. And when you get that local input and involvement, you end up getting a more successful project, and you get more help in getting the things done. In just getting back and digging into this, Jerry Hermanson told me they had a commitment from the National Guard to look for a bridge to go across from River Bend to the recreation property on the Thermalito side of the river. But what has happened to them? I don't know.
So the only group I'm aware of is Lobo, which is the Lake Orville Bicycle Organization. They're still active. They're not as robust as they used to be. But they still have members. Gary Leach, I believe, is their current president. And we have conversations periodically, but even he has not been very vocal recently because there hasn't been a lot of movement with trails, as we've kind of talked in the past meetings, because when DWR and State Parks reached out to FERC and started looking at changing certain things and improving, until the FERC license was done, FERC really wasn't willing to entertain us proposing, because we had community support. State Parks and DWR reached out to all the horse associations that we know of, Lobo and different groups, got a compromise and an agreement between most of the groups. And DWR reached out to FERC, and Eric, I don't want you to speak. If I'm speaking for you, I apologize. But they reached out, and FERC basically told us, until that new license is done, because this was such a big issue during the FERC relicensing, when they did the proposal, that one of the new items with the new license is that they're supposed to form a subgroup just on trails to discuss improvements, changes, the uses. And so as State Parks, and as a partner agency with DWR, my department, we've talked internally as well. I took a lot of heat when we put White Island Trail in, because that was not on the FERC plan and was not part of that. And so we are not going to move forward with new trails or changing trails until the license is done and we can get approval, because we want to be a good partner and support DWR as they've supported us. And just since I have the mic for one quick second, I did reach out to Chris Wagner, which I know from, he's no longer with Parks and Rec, but that was the last person I talked to about talking about anything with trails outside of this group. I will put out again, State Parks is willing to meet with any groups that want to talk about trails. We agree with the partnership. And as I've said before, though, I don't think this is probably the right venue until we have a project that we want to request funds from this group. But I'm an avid trail user. I'm on the trails 20, 30, up to 50 miles a week. So we have a great trail system. I love some of the Feather River Rec and Park trails. I like our trails. And so I'm more than happy to talk.
Yeah.
Just throwing that out there.
Thank you.
Good discussion. I think the city's gonna have a way to move forward here and get back to us. So we'll put that together.
Does that dissolve the ad hoc committee that we created a few meetings ago?
I think so, essentially, because we don't want to duplicate something. We would want, membership in this other group here, because that's where the mechanism could actually put funding to play and put projects to play, because that would be the group that actually build a project. Like, the SBF doesn't build any projects. We don't own anything. So I think I agree, yeah.
Right.
Let's move forward to number 5, amendment to the contract with Mr. Marciniak as SBF's facilitator.
Yes, item number 6 here is, I'll take this one. This is,
Thank you.
yeah, you bet. Mr. Marciniak, he's been under contract with in combination, I guess, with the city and for the SBF to be the SBF facilitator since back in March of 22, and that contract has expired at the end of June this year. So we wanted to bring this forward now for discussion with this board to entertain the thought of renewing that for another couple of years. Currently, it's been the last couple of years paid for 10 hours a month, $800 a month, so about $9,600 a year. In the proposed draft, it's $800 a month, and then with an additional $200 a month for the 4 months where there's a meeting, which would be equivalent to about an 8% increase over the last 2 years. So this is a draft right now. I wanted to get input from this group first, and also I just wanted to throw out there, I know that in the documents it does state that this committee must meet 4 times a year right now, and I wanted to just throw it out there, is that still the desire of the committee until the FERC license is issued? You know, I can see both sides of that. It seems like if you meet any longer than quarterly, you lose that momentum that you do have, you lose that knowledge. But at the same time, I also respect the fact that everyone's time, and if there's no money to be, and no programs being funneled through this group, would it be a better use of time to do it semi-annually? So I just wanted to throw that out there as well for discussion.
I don't know, I think given the revenue stream, I think semi-annually works, unless you guys want to meet quarterly. I mean, because meeting quarterly, we still burn up a little bit more money. If we could meet semi-annually and save a little money in the meantime, unless we have an issue, we can always call a special meeting.
And you could do that, a special meeting.
Yeah.
It would take, I believe, a
Well-
resolution.
The other thing, we've got an ongoing issue, is we're getting no money.
Well, yeah, that's yeah. That's why I said.
And we want to stay on top of that.
Well, yeah,
That
but,
would be the only
yeah,
comment I'd have in that regard. I'm not anxious to come 4 times if I can come twice and get the same thing done.
Right.
the only thing that I'm gonna say is if the city gets its together and produces that letter, we would want to have this body see it, so.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
And that
So-
would be able to be a special meeting, be a short meeting.
Sure.
Yeah.
Well, wouldn't we be able to notify members of this meeting, and then when it goes to council for review, members of this committee could
Oh, that's a
bring
good
comment
idea.
at that
Yeah,
point?
yeah, that's good.
And
Just invite
being
the
as an ad
council
hoc
members.
committee,
Yeah.
couldn't you have one of us on that committee?
Sure, yeah, yes, sir.
Well, again, if it's a city letter, it would go to it'd go to the city council for
Right, for
consideration,
discussion.
but also for public input. I think what you're referring to is
Yeah.
if a letter is written on behalf of the SBF, then that would, of course, would go
Right.
to the chair and vice chair.
Yeah. We'll work it out and we'll see what develops from the letter, and then we'll go from there. I think that sounds good. I'd entertain a motion for the contract of item number 6.
Hold on, I have one more question about the increase in expenses of the extra $200 for meetings, months where we have meetings. I feel that if we have little to no pending invoices or money to spend, then those hours can be reallocated and not, doesn't require those additional hours for meetings or for months that we meet, personally.
So what's your suggestion?
Well, I would not be in favor in that additional $200 for the,
But
I
then.
would be in favor of the, continuing at the $800 a month as it was,
Okay.
but not the additional 200 for meeting.
And then if we meet on a semi-annual basis, that is
Doesn't
every 6
matter.
months, doesn't matter, okay. All right. Just as a way to save money. Like he said, we don't get any money.
Hear that?
I heard it.
Okay?
I don't,
Yeah, there's language in there, obviously, if the FERC license is approved, that's going to trigger.
Yeah, everything
that's what it
changes.
is.
And there's
Okay.
language in there for more time. So would you like us to bring back a resolution during the April meeting to go semi-annually?
Sure,
Yes.
I think so.
Yeah.
I think we have consensus for that. Yeah,
Yes,
let's
we'd
do
have to
that.
bring that back in April for consideration, and obviously,
Okay.
you can always schedule another meeting if you need to, there's no,
Right.
but then at least it'd be semi-annually, and we'll bring the contract as
Okay.
well. Okay,
We'll
We
do that.
can't motion to just cancel the April one and continue in that 6-month time frame.
We'd have to have that on the agenda.
Oh,
Yeah.
all right.
yeah.
Okay, so April will happen, but we'll have this agenda moving forward. So we're next to correspondence, anything? Yep. Nothing. Oh, nothing? SBF Chairman,
Mr. Mayor,
First-
my apologies.
Sure.
I think we did need a motion and approval and a vote for the,
Oh, okay, sorry.
the contract to
Gotcha.
go to the council.
All right, so I motion that we approve the contract without the additional $200 a month.
Okay.
I'll second.
okay, it's a roll call, please.
Sonny Brandt,
yes.
Dave Pittman,
Yes.
Chrissy Riggs,
Yes?
Kent Fowler,
Yes.
Tracy Johnstone.
Yes.
Motion passes unanimously.
Thank you all. Correspondence, he's saying none. Call for agenda items for upcoming for the, any from the steering committee or the SBF advisors or SBF staff. Looking around.
Come on.
None at this time. All right. I would consider a motion for adjournment.
We adjourn.
Been motioned and seconded?
Second.
All signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye, so carried. Thank you all for being here today, and I appreciate the time. We went a little longer than I expected, but we got a lot of business done.